Welcome to Women in the Music Industry, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in an industry that has long been dominated by men. I'm your host, Rob Wells, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this empowering journey. Each episode of this podcast will be dedicated to exploring the inspiring stories, accomplishments, and struggles of the extraordinary women who have defied the odds and made waves in the music business. Together, we'll delve into the journeys of female artists, songwriters, producers, musicians, managers, executives, and all those who have helped play a pivotal role behind the scenes. We'll uncover the stories that deserve to be heard, as well as celebrate the triumphs, challenges, and unique perspectives that women bring to the music industry. Whether you're a fan of music, an aspiring artist, or simply curious about the inner workings of the music business, this podcast will offer a valuable perspective. Together, we'll celebrate the power of music and the strength of these inspiring women. So join us as we amplify their voices and together pave the way for a future where women in the music business are no longer the exception, but the rule. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Songwriter's Piano, an easy-to-use app for songwriters and lyricists to use when coming up with song ideas when there's no instrument around or nobody to play one. With the Songwriter's Piano, one can easily play commonly used pop songwriting chord sequences at the touch of a screen, in any key, in 3 different chord variations, all played on a gorgeously recorded grand piano. Download the Songwriter's Piano by Play Like Me apps today, found on both iOS and Android stores everywhere. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Women in the Music Industry. For those of you who are just joining for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who are coming back, once again, I am so happy that you're here. And today is going to be a fantastic episode. I'm so looking forward to this. We have my dear, sweet friend, Hannah Howie. And Hannah Howie, for those of you that don't know, she's an amazing singer and vocal coach who hails from Edinburgh, Scotland. She has toured the UK and the 7 Seas, entertaining audiences with her soaring soprano, comedic characters, and thrilling performances for over a decade. Most recently supporting Michael Ball OBE, Hannah has starred in Rodgers and Hammerstein's Carousel, Lesley Bricusse Scrooge the Musical, Charles Dickens Hard Times, as well as working with Strictly Come Dancing's and Oliver award-winning director Karen Bruce in the creation of a production show for Princess Cruises. Hannah trained with the Scottish Opera, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, and also has a Bachelor of Sciences in Psychology from Durham University. Not too shabby. She also set up a singing school in 2015, has also taught hundreds of people how to use their voices with more confidence. Her headliner shows are all about variety, from musical theater to pop and rock, Scottish folk music to operatic arias. Hannah does it all with aplomb, showcasing her huge vocal range and fantastic wit through her repertoire, stories, and some original songs. What a bio. That's incredible. All the things you've done, and I get to talk to you for the next hour or so. This is great. Hannah, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me, firstly, Rob. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. Who wrote that?
Well, I wonder. I thank you as well, because you are really fitting us in at the 11th hour. You are about to embark on another cruise, I am hearing, and you'll be gone and out of communication for quite some time.
Yeah.
I understand that communication on cruises is not as easy as one person would think.
It's a little bit haphazard. You never know if the Wi-Fi is going to be variable, strong, or good. And the thing is, that's half the thing I like about it. I can sometimes just switch off technology and go and just sing on a ship for a week, go and see another part of the world, and then come back to real life. And I think that's one of the big draws for me, is that the Wi-Fi may be terrible, but that's okay.
It's really a weird feeling, isn't it? At first, when you switch off, when you lose communication with the world, but then I would assume a couple of days into it, it's actually just such a great feeling.
Yeah. You transition so quickly. Yeah. There's that first 24 hours where your little thumb's probably twitching for your phone. But the amount of times, I don't know about you, Rob, but I pick up my phone and I'm actually not doing anything with it. I'm just picking it up because it's habitual. So it kind of stops that cycle. continuing. It's like a little detox, a digital detox. Yeah. So it's my last day on land before I join a ship tomorrow in fair Rome in Italy.
Wow. And starts in Rome and goes where?
Well, you're asking me. I know it goes through Istanbul and a few new ports for me. Mykonos in Greece, which is just a picture postcard. Can't wait for that day. We're also going to go to Heraklion in Crete and finishing up in Athens, where I will travel back to Glasgow.
Wow, that's amazing. So how much of the world have you not seen? I'll ask you that instead.
Well, do you know what? I've actually not been out to any Asian parts. So like Japan, China, the Philippines, like it's that Southeast Asian corner, India, and I've not done South America. So I was talking to my agent the other day. I'm like, if there's anything coming up in those regions, I would love. And sure enough, I'm going to be going to Asia. I'm going to be going to Japan and Vietnam in October for the first time, and I cannot wait. I'm buzzing. Yeah,
that's so great. So, how much time do you actually get when you're working on a cruise to get out and see the sights? Are you clocking in at work for a certain amount of time during the day?
Do you know what? It varies between the lines and the different kind of requirements of me as I go on board. Usually, if I go on board, say for 7 days, I'll do 2 nights in the theatre with 2 shows a pop, so 4 different shows with a sound check before. So those are working days for me, and I treat them as such from the moment I wake up. My head's in the game. And then I might do the odd little like variety thing around the ship, just something maybe to promote the main stage show, or maybe I might collaborate with, this is one of my favorite things to do, is to collaborate with other artists who are on board. I've got loads of friends now through doing that, and it's really nice to connect with them, do a duet, do something random, jam, and see what comes out. You know, that's honestly my favorite times when I'm on board, is when something random happens and you get that kind of fruition of energy. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to sing with you, and I don't know who you are, but I'll get to know you very quick, and we'll sing this together in front of 1,000 people tomorrow night. Let's do it. So sometimes it's a really busy cruise in that respect, and other times you're just on one night and the rest of it is pretty relaxing. So it's but it was interesting. I was just speaking to someone in the restaurant downstairs, and they were like, you've got an easy life. And I said, yes, I do, when you look at it like that. I really do, and I'm really, really fortunate and grateful for it. But 10 years plus has gone into that. I mean, singing lessons from the age of silly, going all the way up, all the stuff, all the recitals, all the times I've failed, all the no's I've had.
Let's dive into that. I want to know, basically, right. I want to know the whole story of what enabled you to have this beautiful, amazing life. You know, it is a lot of hard work, of course, that went into this, and you deserve everything that is happening to you. You deserve to be on the main stage and singing and entertaining audiences all over the world, because you are just absolutely incredible. I've heard you sing so many times. I've heard your songs. You and I met through the Songwriting Academy, which was a really cool experience, and I got to hear your songs, hear you perform. But then there's this whole other side of you that I learned about as we got to know each other a little bit further. And I would just love to know, like, back from the beginning, could you take us, not too many years back? I know you're super young still, and it's probably only just a couple of years since you've been 5 years old or so.
I'll pay you later, Rob. That's very, very generous of you. I'm 32 and I'm really proud of it. I couldn't wait to get into my 30s. I feel like I'm finally here.
That's awesome. I like to tell people that I'm currently 51, and I love to say, rather than 51 years old, I like to say I'm level 51, and that makes me sound a little bit more badass, just like a video game hero or something.
Like a video game, yeah. You've graduated to 51. I love that. I think age is we're just, let's flip the dial. Like, age is stuff as an absolute gift to be here and to be able to do what we do. And as a woman going into any room at the age of 30, if I don't like something, or if I do like something, I know. That's the great thing with age, is I feel like I can say things now and I don't have to filter, vet, please other people say what they want to hear. I don't care as much. I just don't. If I don't like something, I'll say it. And if I do, I do. And it's quite relaxing. And I can't wait to get to my 40s.
It gets better. It gets better.
It just gets better.
Until eventually you become, or at least I become, the old man from the movie Up, who's just grouchy with everybody and just wants to put balloons on my house and float away.
You know what? I've got a huge confession to make. I've actually not seen the entirety of that film, and I
Well,
need to do
most
it.
people can't get past the first 10 minutes. It's just
Right.
such an emotional roller coaster that they're just, the first 10 minutes of that movie are so sad. I don't know one person that can get through that without a dry eye. It's just, what a movie.
Yeah.
Just incredible. Please do yourself a favor and see the whole thing because
I'll do it this cruise. I'll do that. I promise.
it's a great movie. It's such a great movie. Anyway, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Let's rewind time and go back and give me the short story or the long story, whatever you prefer.
Oh, I'll give you something in between probably with a bit of waffle and tangents galore. So in terms of music, I was really fortunate. I was brought up in a Christian household, and I had access to choral music and congregational singing every Sunday from the age of, well, up from being a baby until I was about 9 or 10. So I learned about harmony and singing, like with improvisation and just introducing songs into a congregation, what worked, what didn't work. I maybe didn't have the language for it, but I was saturated in that environment from a really young age. And I think that really set up what I do now. I think that really strongly, actually. Even though I'm not necessarily on that path now, it's definitely, it was set me up to be like a musical ear and appreciate something that works. And then I went to a lovely, beautiful school, which had a wonderful music program in Edinburgh. It was a boarding school called Fettes College. And they gave me a music scholarship to pursue violin, piano, and singing. And then I was in this chapel choir there. So again, this congregational singing, learning and singing in SATB format, listening to others, touring Europe at the age of 11. Like I was in Amsterdam singing. Like who does that? And I was, again, just so fortunate to have that opportunity. And I took it for granted. I think at the time I didn't realize how exciting that was and how these opportunities were really quite rare for someone of my age, and to get that exposure to all the different types of music, the only thing, and I also had a beautiful singing teacher. Her name was Anne Lewis, and she like really brought me up throughout my teenage years, the really tricky teenage years vocally. I mean, all voices break. And I didn't realize at the age of 13, 14, that female voices also did a similar thing, just not to the same extent. And I was negotiating all that. And she took me through all that, teaching me bel canto techniques. And she would also give me a lesson at the end of term when I could sing what I wanted. So I would bring in something from like the musicals or Disney, because usually we did like more classical Italian repertoire. And that's where it all started, really. I was just, from all different sides of me, I was supported and really encouraged to explore singing, music, and appreciate it. Not so much the pop rock stuff, that would just happen later in my life, but that sort of like classical technique foundation. And I'm really thankful for that. I did violin. I don't do it anymore, but that was definitely helpful as well, because it helped me read music. And I can still pick it up from time to time if I had a whiskey in me, but I have kind of let that one go a little bit.
Were you listening to pop music at this point, or was it just all you were? Okay. What were you listening to? What did you love at that point?
I loved Britney Spears. I love Christina Aguilera, the Spice Girls, all that sort of like 90s, late 90s, early noughties. My sister gave me I stole some of her albums from her room, and she had like Texas and Sixpence None the Richer, and like those sort of like, and then we also had a Sinead O'Connor cassette. And that's just, obviously this week I was just thinking so much about her life and her legacy. I always remember listening to Nothing Compares to You and seeing music television. I remember we got, I always went to my friend's house and she had MTV, and she had a Skybox, and we would sit and watch these amazing music videos when I was like 10, 11, 12, Justin Timberlake, NSYNC, like all that sort of stuff. And then I got into more of my 80s power ballads when I discovered Celine Dion. And I was allowed to watch Titanic at the age of 12, and I heard Celine Dion really singing for the first time. And then that opened up that whole like different part of the big voice, the belt setup, if you like, that kind of 80s melodrama power ballad, which I do a lot now. Again, a really like formative time of my life. But it was there, but I didn't perform it. I listened to it, and I knew what I liked, and I would try and replicate it when I was like, in a big echoey hallway or somewhere where I was alone, because that's always a really generous acoustic. And then I started to sort of teaching and playing my like basic chords on a piano, just so I could sort of accompany myself. And that was a huge like release. So, you know, when you're a teenager, you just want to go and be on your own and be angsty. I would go off to the music part of our school, book myself into a little room and just learn how to like play accompanying a voice. And that's what I do now, like 15, 16, 17 years down the line. It comes from me just taking myself away and like just nurturing that that belief and discovering how to sing whilst accompanying, which is a whole different skill set, which I was never really taught. You just sort of like copy people and hope it works.
It's a hard thing to do to accompany yourself while you're singing. It's two different parts of the brain that are working at the same time. You have to think about your vocal performance, and then you have to think about how the piano is performing as well, and just the chords that you're using, the intensity, the voicings. How does that work in hand with the vocal? I can only just do the piano part, and that's it. I can't imagine singing on top of that.
I've never heard you sing, Rob. Actually,
you don't want to. You really don't. It's not pleasant. Not pleasant. I am, in fact, actually starting singing lessons this month, and I did singing lessons one time when I was, I'd say probably 13. And the singing teacher was the mother of one of my friends. And I went twice. And what happened in both lessons is that all of my friends were hiding behind the kitchen door, listening to me trying to sing and laughing their heads off. And so I only lasted 2 lessons. That was it. And then I quit right after that. I just couldn't handle the embarrassment of that. But I am starting this month with another fellow Canadian named M. Greiner, who's toured with David Bowie, and she's got a new recording with Def Leppard that just came out. But she's the coolest person, and I'm very much looking forward to diving into this world and trying to improve my vocal abilities.
You know what? Make all the ugly sounds at the start, get it out of the way. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's why I always say to my students when they first come in, it's a safe space. You will make ugly sounds because you need to discover what they are and how it feels, and lose the kind of inhibition. I feel like if we're self-conscious as singers, that's when the voice kind of closes up and we get like a tickly sensation, or everything feels dry and we can't breathe and suddenly you implode. But when we care less, weirdly, about how we sound and more about the music and the story you're telling, suddenly the voice just flows. But I've made loads of ugly sounds, and so have all my students. I highly encourage it. I'm excited to hear about your journey into singing. Wow. Yeah,
well, maybe that'll be another podcast down the road that we'll reverse the roles, and you can ask me the questions about my singing journey. But so you're making, I'm assuming you were making no ugly sounds at this point, but you were just learning how to accompany yourself with piano and with voice. Do you play guitar as well, or is it just piano?
I play 4 chords on the guitar, Rob. I think that's all you need. But
all you need.
You know what I find really tricky is the bar chord. I've just got wee fingers. I've got a good spread, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a mental block. I've got to go. I'm just making excuses. Listen to me, just making excuses. I want to learn to play it better. I mean, I was watching Eva Cassidy sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, one of her last ever gigs. And she just sings and plays so beautiful. She's like the queen of accompanying oneself. And with that soaring soprano, I mean, she is the iconic. I mean, that's another huge influence for me musically. But watching her just go through the intricacies of the melody, she's really singing with the guitar, and they're breathing together. And that was a huge inspiration for me growing up. Again, gone far too soon. I mean, she was 33 when she passed.
Wow.
Yeah. I actually wrote a play about her earlier this year, and I've not actually submitted it because I'm scared of doing it, because she's so iconic and she's so beautiful, and and she never really hit it. She never really hit the big time because she didn't want to just hone in one style. She was so diverse in her style. She would do gospel, she would do jazz, she would do pop. And I think at the time, the record label wanted her to hone down on one style so she was an easier sell. But the whole point of her voice is the variety, that she could bring a lot to any style. And then she passed away, and then obviously she was played by BBC Radio 2 2 years after the fact, and her version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow went right up into the charts from a chance playing on Terry Wogan's radio show. And then she was famous, and that's the tragedy of her life, is like the variety and the beauty of her voice is the thing that people love now and talk about. And that was the thing. It was, yeah.
It is true that record companies, they want to know what it is that you are. especially on the first couple of albums. Like they want to say, you are this, this is what you are. And this is, if anyone wants to have this particular style, come and see this right here. And then if the first two albums are successful, third album, they could branch out a little bit. They can experiment a little bit more. And then if that's successful, then the fourth album is just crazy. They can really, really experiment. That's the drag about having a situation where you're signed to a record label, that you have to be one thing and one thing only, all fitting under one umbrella. But the nice thing about what it is that you do is that you can be so many different things. Like it's a variety show. I would imagine. I would imagine that the shows are all different from cruise to cruise. But before we get into that, I want to know from the teen years. Take me on from there with the teen years.
So I had I went to Scottish Opera and did a year with them when I was 19. I left school and I did a year in a kind of an operatic connect company, it was called. And as much as I really enjoyed it, and it really branched out my top end of my range, working above that first and second passaggio, I knew that the operatic form, the same reasons, it was too, what's the word I want to use? It was just so, you had to be really loyal to that. And branching out and using maybe other more contemporary forms of singing was quite frowned upon. So as much as I love opera in itself, and I go and watch it now, and I still use it in certain aspects of my voice, if I was singing, Phantom of the Opera, I tap right into that training. But I also want to do the pop rock. I also want to do the Scottish folk. So I feel like it was a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? It just honed me into like one little corner. And I wanted to branch out and use the variety that I've got, and the interests I have are vast music-wise. So I thought, right. And I had a little bit of a wobble after that. And I ended up going off to do an undergraduate degree in psychology. And I was going to go get a real job. And I'd say that with all respect to everyone who has a 9 to 5 and people who decide that's not for them. I loved my undergraduate degree, and it sets me up for loads of other aspects of my life. And I still reference it loads. But I was always in the Durham Student Theatre. More than I was in the library. And by the end of my third and final year at university, I took myself off to audition for drama school. Secretly, I didn't tell any of my friends. I didn't even tell my mother. And I took myself down to London and I took myself to Glasgow and did secret auditions thinking, we'll see what happens. And they were I was so unprepared because it was on a whim. I was trying to juggle doing my finals and doing exams. And then went into this audition and I was awful. I forgot my words. I was flustered, deeply unprepared, couldn't pick up choreography because my brain was in bits. It was minced. And then but I still got a place. They gave me a recall and I went back and I was better the second time round because I was like, I need to prepare. I can't just wing this. Like, I know I can sing, but it's more than that. You've got to show that you're serious and that you're going to prepare and be professional, Hannah, show them that side. And I got in. So I ended up going to drama school at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland in Glasgow for their Masters of Musical Theatre, which was quite a jump from doing psychology. And I was there in 2013. So a decade ago, which makes me feel really, it feels like yesterday.
It's all a blink of an eye in the grand scheme of things.
Really, truly. Like I was at the Edinburgh Festival yesterday. It just opened and the same venues that I was playing 10 years ago are still there, but it's just with new performers. And that's the exciting thing about it. It's nostalgic, but it's also fresh. I love the Edinburgh Festival. If you can go. It's just stunning. There's comedy, there's music, there's drama, there's everything. You will see anything at the Edinburgh Fringe and it goes because it's saturated in like 10,000, 20,000 artists in 1 mile squared, doing anything in any corner of any room just to entertain and find, whatever is and share their story. It's incredible. There's some absolute things, but there's some great things as well.
Does one performance bleed into another? Does that ever happen? Like, is it that close where just, one thing's happening over here and then you literally on the other side of the room, you could have something else?
You can definitely, soundproofing is great, but it's often, you're right next to, a play happening, the Scottish play is happening next door, shall we say, and then you've got Whitney Houston tribute right next door, and then you've got a new original piece happening, and you can hear the bleed, but that's half the exciting thing in the festival, because you can hear the crowd going mad over there, and there's a stillness in this room, and you wonder why. And then you have 15 minutes. Having done the Fringe now 2 or 3 times, you have 15 minutes after your fully realized musical to get the hell out of there before the next crowd are in with their stuff, and they've got to set up, do their sound check, get the audience of 100 people in. It's mental, and there's this like weird energy, and everyone by kind of week 3 is twitching a little bit because you're exhausted, but you're enthralled by the experience. And
I had my own version of the Scottish festival in Cuba. I got terribly sick, and they whisked me off to the hospital. I was in Veradero, and I was just, both ends. Sorry for the visual. And I get into this hospital room. I have my own room and I have my own bathroom, so that's really great. But I'm just feeling horrible, and I have to fly out the next day back to Canada. And literally the doctor comes in and says, "Do you like baseball?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so he cranks the TV. It's on. It's like blaringly loud, this Cuban baseball game that's going on. And I can't even concentrate on it because I'm out cold pretty much. And then right next door is this club that's playing, like, has a live band, and they're playing the loudest, most amazing Cuban music that you could ever possibly imagine. I'm just lying there in this bed, just trying to feel better. Those two worlds going at the same time kind of gives me like an idea of maybe what it's like being at the Scottish festival.
For sure, and hopefully not feeling so unwell.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely a remix. It's an assault of the senses and all the smells as well. I mean, there's cooking, there's so many things going on. The city becomes this crazy melting pot in August. So if you can go. It's
Sign
amazing.
me up. Yeah, I was just so close. I was just in Ireland, and
I know. I was thinking that you should have come over.
That would have been great. Just a quick jump over the water. That's it. What a beautiful part of the world that is. It's crazy. I think I've been to Scotland when I was a little kid, but every picture that I've ever seen of Scotland is just incredible and just gorgeous. And I remember you and I would have Zoom calls, and you would flip your camera around and show me the little town that you were living in, and it just looked like the most perfect postcard image that you could ever possibly imagine. It's just, I don't think there's a bad view anywhere in Scotland.
I mean, I can definitely give you a list if you want to see those parts, but sure, there's always a dodgy part. But yeah, that place I was in was a holiday home. I'm really fortunate. My family as a whole share, and it was great for me during COVID to go up there and do the songwriting course, have some time out. And when the world was, falling apart, it was just actually a real like serene, tranquil time. And it's such a fond memory being up there and writing up there. I'm very biased, but I'd highly recommend anyone to come to Scotland ever.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not a wasted time or trip at all. So take me through from 2013 up till now, if you can.
Sure. So I graduated, had a wonderful year. I was really fortunate in my master's because the group I was training with were generous, fun. I was just a great group of people. And I think that does shape a lot of, who you're working with, your team, and who you're surrounded by. I mean, you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with, right? That's what they say. So I was really lucky. I had some wonderful friends, still very much in touch with them now. In fact, one of them wrote a show I saw yesterday at the Edinburgh Festival. And she's Canadian. So she's, it's just a small old world at the end of the day. So anyway, we did that master's. I graduated and got an agent. And for those first sort of 5 years, I always intended to go down to London and do like the big West End musical theatre thing, but I ended up doing more work in Scotland. I would do kids shows. I would do a repertoire season up at Pitlochry. I would do new writing. I would do workshops, and I found that really invigorating. And when I went down to London, I did a show down there, and I hated it. I found it really overwhelming. Maybe I was just in a weird place at that point in my life, but I found the city itself, I found it was just way too much for me. And I actually like to be a little bit more in the back burner and certainly more in charge of my own remit. I felt like in London, I was at the mercy of the 4 winds a little bit, especially at that age, and relatively green in the industry. I think maybe now it would be different. So I ended up doing 5 years predominantly of tours and up in Scotland. It's just theatre, and not a lot of musical theatre, to be honest. A lot of it's straight acting and just new writing and stuff that I never thought I would be involved with and ended up in the room for. And I really learned the art of collaboration, because I don't know about you, when I first came out, I was so full of ideas and so full of ego. I would be terrible at taking notes from director. I just knew I knew best. And I put that in quotation marks. And it took, that first 5 years, I learned a lot about, 3 heads are better than one. maybe you're not always right, Hannah. It's good to say, yes, thank you, director. I will take that note and move on. It was a really like formative time for me, working with actors of all ages and stages as well. Like I learned so much from the actors who are older than me, just watching their craft and how they approached their work. And it's the same for anything in the arts, you know. I would offer, if you're younger in the industry, look at those who are older than you and what they do. What's their process, right? How did they conduct themselves? How did they work in the room? What are their listening ears? Do they talk more? Do they listen more? And you'll probably do good for that, because they're there and they're still doing what they do because they'll be good at it. And that's why I had a huge learning curve for me. And then I decided 2018, a relationship I was in ended, and I really wanted just to kind of be established and have my own home. And that became a really like a central thing for me at that point in my life. I think it was just so unstable in my personal life. I wanted to establish some sort of base camp because I'd been so nomadic since the age of about 16. I mean, I'd lived everywhere, and I wanted just to be in one place. And the irony of that is then I applied to work on cruise ships because of the amazing pay packet. It wasn't a creative decision, I have to be honest with you, because I was just told, oh, cruise ships, you know, they're just, you know, you're going to sell your soul and you make a lot of money. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. That's what I need to do right now. I want to make that money. I want to go and do that. And the irony of the whole thing is I've got more creative fulfillment going on the cruise ships and creating my own shows, writing my own cabarets, working out that material, writing my own songs than I've had in my whole life. And I've had the freedom to do it, and the amazing support of like 1,000-seater theatre with a crew who are there, who work the lights, do the tech, do your sound, who can help you. And the band, there's a 7-piece orchestra behind me with people who've worked in Cirque du Soleil. We've got Paul Bannerman, our mutual friend. Like he's just one of the,
Paul.
I'm learning. Paul, like just a huge shout. Man.
Yeah, for those that are listening, hey, Paul, if you're listening to this podcast as well, Paul Bannerman and I have known each other since 1991, I think. And
I was better than 91. That makes me feel really young.
you are really young. I'm really old. I've known Paul since then. I was 19 years old and got to know Paul. We were working at a place called Canada's Wonderland, which is north of Toronto, and it's a little amusement park. And I was the keyboard player. Paul was the drummer, and we just hit it off like crazy. And what a drummer, what a great human being. And he really puts his whole heart and soul into everything that he does. I then, you know, we stayed in touch after Wonderland, and we had lots of fun together. And I know that he went off to do Cirque du Soleil for, I think it was the same show for over a decade. I'm pretty sure that he did this and was never sick, never called in sick. He went to every show and was just posting pictures all the time from where he was in the world, a different place every 3 weeks, and just really enjoying his life, being musical, getting up to wake up every day and be involved in music. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing. You know, you say that, you know, some people are saying that you're selling your soul, but I mean, really, you get to wake up every day and make music. It doesn't matter what you're doing or where you're doing it or how or anything, as long as it's not hurting anybody. It's a great thing. It's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, it's a joy.
And you're getting paid for it too. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the likes of Paul, he's one of those people I was thinking about when I was look at those people who are working in the industry who inspire you and why. I mean, the first time I ever worked with Paul, he came up to me and said, Hannah, I know your show's in like 3-4 days, but do you have a recording of it I could watch so I can see how the show flows alongside your charts you've given me, and then we can have a really good rehearsal. And no one's ever done that to me before. No one's ever asked that question. And this show flowed so much better because he understood, you know, he'd done his homework. Sounds basic, but my goodness, you know, there's he's just so positive and such a good energy, and someone I really inspired me. And huge shout out and huge gratitude and thank you to Paul for that.
I mean, the amount of musicians that you can meet worldwide, from people coming from all over the world to come together to make this cruise performance happen. The networking opportunities that you have, where you just meet people from all across the world that have flown in for this cruise, that you get to meet 1,000 new people every week. Like it's all absolutely a win-win situation. I think it's a great thing to have happen. Tell me about the first time that you went on to a cruise and your first experience going onto the ship and you're the performer and not knowing what to expect. Just walk me through that if you can.
The first ever cruise ship I was on, I was actually part of the cast to start with. So I went on with, like, we'd rehearsed in Los Angeles as a group and created like 5 shows together, and we brought that to the ship. And it's tried and tested, and it's more like you're part of the machine and you stand on a number and sing like this. But I was always noted on being a little bit too, what's the word, creative in my choices. So I had to kind of learn to kind of rein it in and be like, do the thing, but tick the box. But there was that side of me that always wanted to try something else and be a little bit more creative and have freedom to do that. So the discipline, I guess, of the first thing, doing the cast work, really helped me with my process. Like, what do I do if I have a show day? How do I prepare, like, mentally, physically? How do I look after myself? How to do makeup, how to do your hair, like things I hadn't really considered before. How to walk on stage in a particular manner when the song's playing. These sound like basic things, but again, I picked them up all from working with amazing dancers who know how to move, how to hold their bodies and perform using their bodies. They're not even using their voices as such. And so that was incredible. I learned so much from that first cruise experience, being a part of a group and having the discipline and the rigmarole and being part of a bigger system and more of these sort of West End type style musicals. But then it also showed me the thing I really wanted to do, which was my own stuff, do a cabaret, bring that discipline, bring all that training, bring all that knowledge and create something that's like personal and sharing with, because I know I can talk to an audience. I know I can tell people stories, and I would never say I'm a comedian, but I enjoy making people laugh and I enjoy self-deprecating humor. And I think that always works well on stage. Combining that with musical theatre or Scottish folk or pop rock, whatever the genre is, and bringing that to the stage. So still having all the elements from before, but then bringing my kind of creative spark to it and something that I can create into my own baby and I'm proud of. So I was really fortunate. I was on as part of a cast, but the entertainment director on board said to me, hey, do you have your own 45-minute set? And I was like, no, but give me 2 weeks. And I went away and wrote my first ever cabaret, which was all about Scotland. And I did it in a graveyard slot in the B lounge at the back of the ship on a really like boring port day. Like, he just gave me the worst slot just so I could get the dress rehearsal version out the way. And I still got the flyer for it because I'm like, I made so many mistakes and I don't even want to watch it back. But at the same time, the buzz I got and the satisfaction I got from doing that, I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm a cabaret artist. I like to be myself on stage, but also put on all these wee hats. I like to tell people stories and I want to do it. This is what I want to do. And that was exciting because suddenly I got my teeth into something and I felt like, oh, I can see where this goes now for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever. And that's what I'm doing now. So now I've created 3 of those 45-minute shows and I fly on ships all around the world and do like a week here, a week there. And it's really exciting. I'm just at such a happy place in my career. It's been such a weird journey getting here. It's not kind of typical journey I would offer either. And obviously supported by so many amazing people along the way.
There is no one way to get into any part of this industry. There's no one, do this and do this and do this, and this is going to happen. It's just everyone's got such a different story, which is what I love about doing this podcast is, I could interview lots of people that do the same thing, but their story is entirely different. And there's inspiration to be found in everyone's story as well. Lots of great stuff. I love the fact that this person saw the talent within you, saw that burning desire and the ability that you can rock this. And they offered that to you without you going and saying, hey, I've got this idea for maybe doing something like this. They came to you and they're like, do you have something? Can you do something like that? And that's great that just shone through when you were part of the cast.
I could have said no. And to be honest, there was a part of me that's like, oh no, that sounds like a lot of work. Or no, I'm scared. But I feel like it's about being in the right place at the right time. Yeah. But also it's about the attitude that we bring to the room. Like, say yes and be prepared to fail. I made so many mistakes in that first year. Of course I did. But that's what serves me better now. I'll learn much more doing mistakes than I will doing a perfect show. And and I was in a safe space and I was supported in doing that. And and also send the elevator back down. He did that for me. And I see people coming up now who are wanting to get into the same sort of line of work as me. You know, give them all the support that you can. There's enough jobs out there. Trust me, there are enough gigs out there for us all. There's no competitiveness for me there. It's you'll find the right place and it will be there for you waiting. You just have to say yes and go in with the right headspace and attitude and work hard, which, you know, that goes without saying. If we're artists, you have to work doubly hard, don't we?
Of course. So I'm curious, you go away for a week, you do your performances. How many performances do you do in a week of your cabaret show?
It depends. I could do contractually, I could do 3 nights of a week. So I could do 6 shows in a week, which is fine, which is great. But sometimes it could just be 1. It depends on what they need, how many other guest artists they have on board, how big their cast is, if there's a cast illness. I've been called at 5 o'clock on an afternoon when I've been like, you know, it's my relaxing day off, and they've asked me to go into a sound check to do the show that night because they've had an injury. So you're sort of part of the remit for that week, and you can be flexible on board. But yeah, 1 to 6 performances with anything in between. And you can be, you know, it can be on a port day, it can be on a sea day, which is rocky. Variety is the spice of life. You just have to, again, just say yes and be ready for anything, I guess, in this line of work. And also, like, some people walk up and their luggage has not arrived. That's a huge aspect of my job. Like, I just bought air tags. This is not sponsored, but I just bought air tags. So I'm like, if all my dresses and all my music are in the wrong bag, then I'm going to be naked on stage singing nothing. So you've got to be prepared for that sort of stuff as well, because, you know, international travel is busy and it's temperamental.
I'm sorry if you get asked this all the time. I'm sure anyone who's on a cruise gets asked this when they're performing. How does one get used to the rocking of the ship where you're trying to stand there and give a performance? I'm assuming, hopefully, that the stage is in the middle of the ship, or does it ever happen that it's usually in the front?
It's usually at the front, and the kind of, say if a normal ship is like 0 to 13, they never have a deck 13. I can't believe I just said that. No ship in the world has a deck 13. It's bad luck. So say if the average ship is 0 to 14 decks, you'll usually be on 6 or 7, and right in the middle at the front or right at the back. I don't know any ship I've ever worked on which is in the middle, and the middle is the most stable part. But I think that's why they have a lot of cabins there, because a lot of people get on, well, that's where the cabins need to be. And that's where, you know, it's fair enough. And we're on for longer. Hopefully we've got our sea legs. That's what you call it, growing your sea legs and getting used to it.
But you could potentially, during any performance, you could be rising, falling 10, 20 feet.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been in 9-meter swells and it was hard. And people have fallen on stage. I haven't, touched wood, yet in all my time, but it's funny. You just got to laugh. Everyone feels in the theatre. That's the thing. So there's nothing the people I feel for are the dancers who are doing a triple pirouette, landing, and suddenly the stage is there when it was meant to be there, you know, further or closer away from you. I feel for them because that's when ankle injuries, they're quite prolific in the cruise industry for dancers. But the hardest thing for me, oddly, is standing still on stage. Because the rocking, if you lean into the rocking, that helps you. You go with the momentum, don't fight it. You're fine as long as you're holding your core and you learn to walk and you have stronger kind of core muscles that way. But if you're standing still and you're in a bevel, so you're sort of slightly off center anyway, in terms of your balance, that's when people usually, singers anyway, have definitely tripped and fallen. And it's funny. And you just have to laugh because there's nothing else to be done, especially if they're singing something really serious. And then we get back to work and then we're being professionals. So it's just par for the course. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Speaking of Paul Bannerman, I remember so clearly this one performance that we did at Canada's Wonderland. It was a covered stage from the elements, but there was this one storm that came in and the rain was coming in horizontally, like at hurricane force speeds. And I remember there was a boy and a girl that were there singing "Where Does My Heart Beat Now" by Celine Dion. And just seeing them getting pelted in the face with the elements and still there, just like giving the best performance that you could ever possibly imagine. Just God bless them. That was amazing to see.
Didn't Taylor Swift do that like 2 weeks ago? Like she was on stage in America somewhere, and you know the heavens opened, the concert went up an hour late, and she said, "Screw it, let's just do it anyway." And the shots of her hair at the end of the 3rd hour and her performance is incredible. I think it added to it. There was this like frenetic wet energy, and everyone just went for it. It was mad, and people were like selling the bottled rainwater on YouTube or TikTok
No.
after. Yeah, and they're like, this is from Taylor Swift's concert in May 2023 when she got absolutely soaked. Have it for like when I don't know how much it went for, but I love that. I love it when something goes wrong, because you know what? That's when you need to kind of go with it. Fly by the seat of your pants. Some crazy things can happen then, some exciting things and things you wouldn't have expected otherwise. I love that kind of stuff when things go wrong.
Oh, for
You know,
sure.
I think it comes from like, I love doing pantomime. That's a huge aspect of my work. When I'm home at Christmas time in the UK, I'll do panto, and panto is all about things having a structure but allowing the audience in. And you know, it's like a fairy tale done. I don't know if you've ever seen panto, Rob. You're looking at me like, what is pantomime? It's such
That's
a British.
Sure.
It's like
Please explain.
it's like a different art form. It's like basically you take a fairy tale and you make it sort of humorous. So obviously you've got your kind of classic love story going on. You've got your comedic friends. You've got lots of musical elements, and it's high costume. It's like a musical, but there's always something for the adults. So think about Shrek. That's a really good reference point as a film and as a kind of level of humor. There's something for the adults. There's something for these people. There's something for these people. There's something for the kids. So it's like a fairy story on acid, and the audience are always coming back to you with something. You know, there's loads of classic retorts. The audience are the next character to join the last character in the puzzle piece, right?
Yeah.
And things go wrong. The dame is a woman, it's a man in drag often. So that's your kind of your maternal character on stage. There's a slapstick donkey. It's crazy. Like, if any of your North American listeners or contingent want to see pantomime, come over to Scotland at Christmas time. But it's that idea that things will go wrong and you just have to go with it and fly with the seat of your pants and see, you know, what's comedic, what's funny, and it's off the hoof. It's like improvisation to the max, but within the structure of a fairy tale. And so I'm doing one at Christmas time. I am doing Cinderella, but I won't be Cinderella. I'm doing my first ever fairy godmother, so I can't wait for that. And but I think that that sort of like school of thought for me. Like, I like it when things kind of go wrong sometimes, because you just have to go with the flow.
Oh, but those are the things that I am waiting for all the time. I love when things go wrong. I love watching newscasts that go horribly wrong. There's a terrible one where somebody got struck by lightning and they were in a coma for 2 weeks, and then they are revived and they're being interviewed. But then when they go to play the interview tape, the tape gets stuck. And they're literally going like this and shaking like crazy because it's just the tape is stuck.
Right.
And so they're like, it's such a big buildup. They're saying, you know, this poor person was struck by lightning. They were in a coma for 2 weeks. Now they've woken up, and here's what they have to say. They're just shaking. It's a genius. It's such a great moment when things go wrong. I love it. There's a great video on YouTube that if anyone wants to look this up, it's a high school theatrical production of Peter Pan, where everybody's on wires so that they can all just go floating around and all that. And something happens where somebody backstage gets the wires mixed up. So Peter Pan's standing at the back, ready to fly, and they go to pull the wires, and suddenly Wendy comes flying out of the bed and goes right across the stage, screaming obscenities all the way across. And it's just, I live for moments like this. I don't know why I have such a dark, twisted sense of humor, but it's fantastic.
I think we all do. That's where all these like there's an amazing franchise in the UK, and I don't know if it's across on Broadway yet. It's called The Play That Goes Wrong, and they've also got Peter Pan Goes Wrong now, and they've got, you know, Christmas Goes Wrong. The whole thing rolls out. But the original guys who wrote it, it was again at the Edinburgh Festival in a classroom, and they premiered it on a shoestring budget. The concept of a show, and you see the backstage, front stage sort of like relationship as an audience, and you see how all the things that could potentially go wrong in a theatre, and they made it into a play, and it's now in the West End. It's hilarious because we like that. We like it. We're quite sick, twisted humans. You know, we like a fall from grace. We like to see a hero rise and then come back down again, back down to earth. It's what keeps us human, I guess. So seeing people fail makes us kind of, you know, it helps us weirdly be like, okay, we're all normal, we're all human, it's okay. So seeing what goes on behind the scenes as well, like, people are nosy. We like to know what's going on behind the scenes, so it kind of satisfies that craving as well. And then creative genius just flows. I love it. So
back to the cruise. You have toured all of the world, well, except for Asia and certain parts, South America, things like that. How much time do you get during the week to actually get out and see the sights?
Quite a lot, because think about it, I'm not going to perform when nobody's on board. So when all the passengers are outside, so will I be. And we'll, you're usually docking to a place until about 5 o'clock at night. Sometimes you'll do a late sail, but on average, it's about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And then everyone comes back on board. We all get dressed up, go out for dinner, and then you get entertained. And that's when I, kick off. That's when my gig starts. So, even if I am working at 5 o'clock, I've got a sound check. I tend not to get off. But back in the day, when I was a bit more gallus and less structured in my approach, I would definitely get off, go to the beaches, go and see the sights, do a tour, just saturate myself in whatever was on offer in that port. Sometimes they're great ports, sometimes they're awful. It's like anywhere. But yeah, that's something I definitely wanted to do early doors, because it was such a new, and the novelty of cruising was still high. Now, if I've got a work day, it doesn't matter what port I'm in, I will not get off this ship. I'm in work mode, and I start the day off with gym. I'll eat right. I'll steam my voice. I'll warm up. I'll go and find a piano. Like, I'll do all those things and just have my little routine, because that's what sets me up. That's my structure. I know if I get those boxes ticked, then I'll be okay for the night ahead.
So taking care of your body is very, very important, and mentally preparing for the show is very, very important as well. And then you have your performance in the evening. Performance would run after dinner. So start time 8 o'clock roughly.
Sometimes there's a pre-theater, and I quite like that crowd because they're all there for you. I did a pre-theater last week in Iceland, and it was such a gorgeous little night. And I was done by 6:45, and everyone went to dinner. I know, but then you can, it depends on the line. But sometimes you can do a 6, you can do an 8, you can also do a 10. The 10 o'clock crowds are always the drunkest and the funnest. I would offer. They're the most leery, so you have to be ready with your kind of quips, because people like to chime in and say what they have to say, and I quite like it. So we have a dialogue more in those shows, shall we say? But that's fun. Again, it's a slightly different crowd. And the other thing I would offer is the demographic changes. Every time I go to a new place, the audience changes. So I've got to make sure that whatever I'm saying is landing, is relevant, is entertaining and applicable to that crowd. And I think that's the biggest challenge now that I'm finding is, you'll have a crowd of 1,000 drunk 40-year-olds one day. And then the next day you'll have a very refined 80s plus crowd who are there for a pre-theater dinner. Pre-dinner theater. And it's just, you never know what you're going to get. So my craft I'm honing now is gauging before I even get into the theater. Okay, what does this crowd expect? What would work for them? And then just testing them, having my kind of go-to moments in the show of chat, of jokes, of songs, and seeing how they respond, and just taking and feeding from that energy to take the show forward. So it's slightly different for me every time, according to who's in the room. That's something I'm learning now, and I'm really enjoying the challenge of that, because every single ship gig is so different.
Do you ever change up the songs based on where you're visiting on that cruise?
Yeah, for sure. So I used to do a Kate Bush, and I didn't do it for a while because this was in 2018, 2019. Kate Bush wasn't big in America, or at least the audiences I was singing to, they were like, who? What? Who's Kate Bush? And then Stranger Things happened, running up that hill, that sing happened, and then suddenly there's a whole crowd of kids now who love Kate Bush, and she's had this sort of resurgence and revival, and she's always been big in the UK, but I would traditionally have not sung that on an American ship because it just doesn't land. You've got to pick and choose your material according to the demographic and who's going to be in front of you, and also what's happened that week. I'm definitely singing Nothing Compares to You this week because I love Sinead O'Connor, and she was a huge influence on me, and I've got that ready to go. And that's something I don't usually do. I usually have it in my other show, but I really wanted to do it this week, so to pay homage to her. So I think I mix it up to keep it interesting for me, but also just to keep it relevant and fresh for the audience, for sure.
Boy, was it ever crazy to be in Ireland last week when Sinead O'Connor passed away. Just
you must have.
To see the entire country just absolute sadness, and just the weight of it all. It was pretty incredible. We actually took half a day out and honored her and played her music and spoke about her, and Yeah, pretty wild. But that's, yeah, I would love to see your performance of Nothing Compares to You. That'd be incredible.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank you.
So is it difficult? Like, okay, so you do 1 week at a time,
Hmm.
but do you do multiple weeks in a row, or is it just sort of 1 week and then you go back to Scotland and then fly out for another week, or do you do sometimes 10 weeks in a row? How does it work?
They would keep me on maybe two cruises back to back. So the longest I've been on is about 2 weeks because I've had two different groups of passengers come on. So I work obviously double, but I'm on for longer. So it makes sense. The math still adds up. But beyond that, it's nice to leave as well, because it's like, okay, I've done my job here. They've seen me, they've seen all I can do for this week, and now I'm off. The only other contract which might keep me out. So say if I went to Australia, that's quite an expensive long ticket for me to go all the way out there from Scotland. So I might do 4 ships back to back. So I'll do a week on this one, and then I'll get off in Sydney and join one the next morning. And I'll do another, and I'll, just do it like that's called a tranship. So I might do 4 of those back to back to make that sort of month worthwhile. And it's a little bit more ecological as well for the environment. I don't like the idea of me flying all the time. So the more ship back to back contracts I can do, the better. I've got everything with me. I can go for weeks and then come back and make it work that way. But yeah, they wouldn't keep me on, I don't think, especially if it was a longer cruise. And there's cruises that are 179 days long. So I would be on for a tiny wee segment of that. And then there are cruises that are only 4 days long. And so I'll be on maybe for that one and then another one, which is on just afterwards. So it depends on the mathematics of the bookers and the cruise directors and the itineraries of the ships. And I'm just part of that little puzzle.
Do you see some of the same audience members from cruise to cruise? Do you like year after year, do you see some of the same people?
Yeah. And thanks to the power of social media, like they can kind of track you and sometimes they follow you physically as well as like on the media, social media side of things. Yeah, there's been a couple recently. They came up to me and they were like, I saw your very first version of this, or I saw your premiere, or I saw the time that you had your dad on board in 2019, and they just happened to book the cruise that I was now on again. And it's really lovely to see those people again because they come back and, the show is maybe slightly different. I'm slightly older. I have different stories and you hope it progresses. I think it has. And they seem to see it. So it's always nice. It's like, it's like I have lots of like grannies and granddads and aunties and uncles all around the world who are on these ships who come to see me. They're kind of extended family and they keep in touch and they let you know all their stories. Because that's the other thing. The show that I do all about Scotland, I say it's all about Scotland. It's really quite autobiographical. It's more about my family within the context of Scotland, and Scottish music backs that up. So I open up and tell people a lot about my family and how I grew up and about, things that maybe not everyone would know about me. And then I feel like when an audience member hears that, they have the permission to do the same. And then afterwards, the amount of people who've come up to me and told me things that they haven't said to anyone ever, or that's the first time they've heard that song and it reminded them of that person who's no longer with us. And you suddenly get all these wee stories that people tell you and sharing about, and you've never met them before. You have no idea who they are, but then they're sharing their probably deepest, darkest secret with you because you've connected during that wee show. And I always make a little point at the end of shows to go out and say hi to audience members, especially after the Scottish one, because people want to chat. They want to tell me things. And so I'm just like everyone's therapist, and that's fine because that's where the psychology comes in. So it's all worked out really, Rob.
Nothing is ever wasted. Nothing is ever your years of learning psychology. You can absolutely use that going forward throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, you leave the cruise and you come back to Scotland and you teach people how to sing, hundreds of students. I know you do many things, but I would love for you to touch on that as well. And anyone who's thinking about taking singing lessons, I would definitely recommend that they come to you as long as you have openings and availability. I'm not sure what your schedule is like, but could you tell me a little bit about when you come home and the students that you have and the journeys that you've seen?
That's so rewarding, that work. And it's been my bedrock between gigs, especially when I was still on land doing theatre jobs. I would teach between those and during sometimes as well. And the amount of people who've come to me, I see all people from all walks of life in this line of work, which is the best part. I have people who come to me are trained actors who've got an audition tomorrow and they need to learn 16 bars. Let's go. And then I have someone who comes in next who was mute when they were a teenager because they were bullied at school. and they just went mute and they've never really spoken about it. And now they want to sing karaoke, and I'm going to take them on that journey. And then I've got everyone's daughters and sons coming through who are just discovering their voice for the first time. I have loads of students who are like gender neutral as well, and they're discovering where their voice sits within singing, because like that's so associated with gender. At least it was when I was growing up. You know, you're a soprano, you're a treble, you know, and that's all being, you know, turned upside down now in a good way. You know, keys are keys. We can play with anything these days, and I really enjoy that aspect. This is the point I'm making. I love it because I don't know who I'm going to get in through the door half the time. And I take them where I find them, and we find what they want to do and use singing to do that. And I love it. And I always miss my students when I'm away. It's a real conflict I have in my life. I wish I could split myself in three. I would have like a version of me at home just teaching everyone all the time. But unfortunately, there are only 24 hours in the day and there's only one of me. But I love the teaching. And it was my bedrock as well during COVID. You know, those online Zoom sessions I had with students. It's actually how I met my partner. He was my student during Zoom. He popped on for his very first ever lesson on August 2020. And I remember thinking, gosh, he's handsome, but I had to be professional, didn't I? Because I was his teacher. And then after 6 months of teaching him, we ended up writing a song together, inspired by the Songwriting Academy. And then we went for a KFC when we could, after COVID sort of kind of went away for it. Well, it didn't go away. When the rules were relaxed, we went for a KFC. And then now we're, you know, hopefully he's going to ask me to marry him soon, but who knows?
That's amazing. I love that.
So I met my partner through teaching as well. So that's something another thing I'm hugely grateful for. But in terms of teaching, for me, I also get loads out of it because there's things I have to really know. As a teacher, you have to know what you're saying before you start recommending it to other people. So it's helped me massively with my own singing and my own craft, as well as imparting the knowledge I get from other performers to take from the stage back to my students. So they're really symbiotic, and I love both aspects of my kind of career. And I'll never give up the vocal coaching. A lot of people say, "Oh, isn't that your bread and butter? Why are you still doing that?" I love it. I will always do that. I will always have that element of my career in one way, shape, or form, for sure. I love it.
Giving back is one of the best things I find. You know, you reach a certain part in your life and you realize that you've got a lot of information stuck in your head. And sometimes like me, a lot of useless facts and figures that are there. But then there's other elements that some people, it could help them along the way. You know, giving back and helping someone and showing them how to do something is always a good thing. I always argue that if you teach somebody how to do what it is that you do, they could end up doing the next big thing that it blows you away. That becomes your next favorite musical act or your favorite song or favorite movie or whatever. Just, you know, share everything that you have in that brain of yours and your talents and your gifts and inspire the world, make the world a better place. And I love the fact that you were doing that. Speaking about inspiring, just finally, if I could get this from you, could you give some words of advice to the next generation coming up? Is there anything that you would love to tell them to help them along their journey? Are there any pitfalls that you've experienced at all along the way that you can help steer them around, or whatever you'd like to say on this moment? I'll give it over to you.
I'm deeply inspired by the younger generation, Gen Z, to be honest. I feel like half of it's the other way around, because I feel like they're so forward thinking, open, honest. I feel like they're really creative in a way that they're quick. And it should be that way. You know, the generation below us should be better than us. That's how we should work as a race. We should get better. So in a lot of ways, I want to say thank you to them, because I'm learning a lot about content creation and just being open to experiences in a way. But I'd say for anyone listening, we all have something really individual to bring to the table, and there's nothing like, everyone wants to hear your story and it's unique. That's the most exciting thing about you. There's no one else like you in the world. And so find what it is in whatever medium, be it singing, be it through an instrument, be it through producing, acting, writing, whatever it is that you feel like, oh, you're in a flow. Bring that to the table, because that will be the most authentic version of you. And you can show up to work every day and never feel like you're working. I feel like you're just being and being your best self at whatever you do. And that's the thing I would impart. You know, I feel like that there only is one of you. I've written a song about this. It's called One of a Kind. And I wrote it for my nieces and nephews. I thought if there's one piece of advice I could give to my related children, what would I say? Just be yourselves. Find what it is you love, and whatever that is, and express it authentically as you. And that's the best thing you can do for the world and for yourself, for sure.
Beautiful words. I love that. Hannah Howie, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you, Rob Wells. It was a joy. It's gone so quickly. We've been chatting, haven't we?
Time goes by quickly when you're having fun. I've definitely been having fun listening to your story, and I know so much more about you now. It's great. And if there's one thing that you've said that lights a spark within somebody out there, then I think that we've done a good thing here. Definitely.
We've done our job. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
I think you are so talented. I think you are such a lovely person, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward. I know our paths are going to cross many, many times. And who knows, maybe I'll be on a cruise one day if I can convince the rest of my family to go. They're not real big cruise lovers, but I'll try and convince them to go on one. And I hope and pray that you are the onboard entertainment for that week. That would be incredible.
I'll just come and crash Canada. I'll do that.
You can do that too.
Well, thank you so much, darling. Thank you again.
Thank you. Say hi to Rome. It's 11 o'clock at night for you right now, but and have a great time on this next cruise coming up, and enjoy every single day. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Stay tuned for the next episode of Women in the Music Industry, coming soon. Let's embark on this incredible journey together, celebrating the women who are reshaping the music business one note at a time. If you enjoyed hearing this podcast, please take a moment and give it a like, a rating, or a follow. Your support helps immensely. We'll see you next time.